Welcome to the Nerd and Normie Podcast. I'm a big film nerd, Everett.
And I'm Emerald, and I'm engaged to a nerd.
On this week's episode, we will be covering
It Lives Inside, directed by Bishal Dutta.
And I picked Aporia, directed by Jared Moshe. For both of these movies, we will do non-spoilers and then spoilers. There'll be time codes down in the description for you to jump around.
When Tamir and I were kids, my mom used to tell us stories.
So for my movie this week, I picked It Lives Inside. And we liked it. I mean, It's a pretty solid, I just want to make sure. Yeah. Pretty solid PG-13 movie just for a Halloween party, whatever. It was fun.
Yeah, I think it has a 63% on Rotten Tomatoes.
And that's the critic score. The audience scores 43%, which is really surprising to me.
And I think that's just harsh. I don't know what anyone was expecting out of this. It markets itself as a teen horror, and it delivers a teen horror. I guess maybe people wished it was
scarier or
R-rated, more gore or something, but again, that's not what they told you they were giving you.
Yeah, it's very PG-13 teen horror, and I think the storyline is interesting. I think it's a newer, it's a very similar story to ones we've seen before, but they incorporated different cultures in a way that's it's a new monster that you haven't seen before, I feel which is interesting, and it was good.
I was actually just having a conversation with a coworker at work, obviously, and he and I were talking about how it would be so fun if horror movies just picked different mythologies and traveled to other parts of the world and used other monsters than the standard zombies, werewolves, vampires, that kind of stuff, and actually start showing, because there's some really terrifying things out there. And this movie did it. It goes to Hindu religion and Eastern India for its kind of source material and delivers an effective movie.
The main actress, I've seen her in a lot of teen TV shows that have come out, Never Have I Ever and Ginny and Georgia and stuff, and I think, she's fine. She played the part well. I think the girl who played Tamira was pretty good as well. I don't know, it's just
across the board, I think everyone did their job. There's no standout performance. This is, it's not a Hereditary or even Talk to Me. That's this performance driven artsy horror movie.
But I liked it better than Talk to Me.
It's a mainstream conventional PG-13 horror movie. And so if that's what you're after this, fall, as we're heading into spooky season, and you're looking for, my 15-year-old's getting into spooky stuff and wants to go see a new horror movie, this would be a great movie to take them to. I actually, again, I don't like horror traditionally. I would not consider this a movie I enjoyed watching from the standpoint of I don't like the creepy stuff, but putting my personal bias aside, there's nothing wrong with this movie. And it's a good entry into this genre.
Yeah, it's for sure an appetizer horror movie. If you're going there expecting to get shocked or super scared, that's not what it is.
Or
but that's
lots of
never
gore or a profound emotional story.
But it never claims to do that. It literally is what you see in the trailer. It's maybe one or two jump scares, very, very just calm horror. It's not intense, it's not super scary, it's not for the seasoned horror person. It is for up and coming horror people to watch.
It's an intro to horror.
But yeah, I mean, it was good. It follows, I guess we should get into what it's actually about. Obviously this is spoiler free, but it follows a girl who is Indian, and she doesn't really want to be, more she wants to be accepted, and there has been a history of people not accepting other Indian kids or kids of color because they're not used to seeing them. And yeah, I don't know. It's just her trying to kind of whitewash herself to make friends with other people. And she had abandoned one of her friends who's also Indian that she grew up with because she didn't like the way people looked at them with them being friends. And that girl's struggling and disappears. And she has to kind of figure out what's going on. And obviously, if you've seen the trailer, there's spooky monster stuff happening. So I mean, obviously we'll go into more during spoilers, but that's kind of just the gist of it.
Yeah, and again, like the like drama side of this movie is very simple. It's very generic. The teen daughter just wants to fit in and doesn't respect her culture. The parent, particularly her mother, is super into their culture and their history. It leads to arguments, and then, you know, the movie continues and things develop and whatever. It's nothing groundbreaking, nothing new. But I don't know. Not every movie needs to try to be the most profound drama, because if it is, we just get a lot of like Oscar baity type movies that nobody enjoys because they go, oh, it thinks it's so much smarter than it is. This movie knows exactly what it is and delivers.
All right, going into spoilers. Sorry if you can hear our dogs snoring in the background. It's the only way they stay quiet is if they're down here asleep with us. But anyways, going into spoilers. Yes, so the main girl grew up with Tamira and they were best friends growing up, and then she decided she wanted more friends, so she kind of ditched Tamira. And a year before, or something, yeah, I think a year before, another Indian family died after their son kind of went crazy, and they said it was a suicide, but they weren't sure because it was really weird, and there was like a rumor that all of the family was burnt alive, but then there was no signs of a fire, so they couldn't figure out what happened. And then Tamira started acting very weird. She started carrying this weird little jar around, and she comes to Samita or Sam for help, and you know, she notices her friends are whispering and watching them talk, so she smacks the jar out of her hand and breaks it, releasing this demon god thing. And then Tamira goes missing, and they don't really know what happened, and people around Sam start being attacked, like she's had a crush on this boy in school, and they finally kiss, and then he gets strangled by a swing set. And so people start getting hurt around her. This teacher who's been very supportive of her, she gets injured as well, and then her and her mom, you know, learn to kind of fight off the demon thing for a minute and get it out of their house, and realize the things they have to do in order to get it trapped in something again. They need some kind of a vessel. So she finds out where Tamira is and goes there to save her, and tries to get this monster into the jar, but if she says the chant by herself, she'll be burned alive. And the monster knocks the jar out of her hand and breaks it, and then her and Tamira do the chant, and she traps it in her own body and has to eat raw meat.
Yep.
The end.
Yeah. So it's a Pishash, or Pishasha is the creature that they use, which comes from Hindu and Buddhist mythologies, and
it's a soul-eating demon, basically.
Yeah, it latches onto your negative feelings and has to quote-unquote tenderize the soul by making you go crazy and suffer, hurting anyone who tries to help you, and then eventually consuming you. And I would say for 90% of this movie, they do a really good job of doing like the Invisible Man type effects where people are getting thrown all over the place but you can't see anything, and you get these glimpses of these glowing eyes in the dark and in mirrors and whatever, and it works really well. And then you do eventually see a lot of it in the third act climax.
And part of it is such good practical effects. Like, it's really cool up close.
When it's
almost
standing there, or in a super close up, or, you know.
Yeah. not
minimal
like
movement.
scary, but it is cool to look at. But when he's like chasing her around the room, it literally looks like someone wore a Barney costume to the point that it's just shreds. Like, it looks like a weird bony dinosaur. It's not very good full form, but
yeah, and
up close it's cool.
Yeah, up close it's cool. It's well done. But yeah, the actor who is portraying its movements, I don't know if that was the direction they were asked to go or if the suit limited their ability to move, but it's just clunky and kind of silly.
Yeah.
But that being, like, I don't know, it never fully took me out of the movie or ruined it for me. And so, you know, whatever, at least they did it practically and didn't do some CGI monstrosity. Like, it looks far better than most CGI monsters that get shown way too much in movies.
Yeah, it really does. And I like that it was, you know, mostly invisible for 90% of it. But all in all, it really is just like a solid PG-13 intro to horror movie. Like, don't go if you're expecting to be scared. Just go if you know, have a bunch of friends and you're just getting into horror, and it's just like, yeah, it's like a fun little Halloween movie.
Yeah, and as I alluded to before, the drama, you know, the daughter ends up realizing that because she's being hunted by a creature from her family's religion and mythology, she needs to consult her mother to learn things, and her mother accepts her back, and they work together and help try to defeat this thing and learn about it and all of this kind of stuff. And
making beautiful, incredible looking food as offerings.
We love Indian food, so it was pretty mouth-watering. But yeah, I think, again, it doesn't go the extra step and confront really the issue of, you know, being a first-generation American with immigrant parents, or, you know, the way the mother at times is very aggressive in wanting her daughter to be traditional and everything, and there's no real, the daughter learns to accept her past and the mother learns to let the daughter be more herself. You know, there's not too much addressing of that kind of stuff, but again, that's not what this movie is. If you want that type of movie, go seek out a drama, not a horror movie.
Exactly.
And yeah, we've been getting lots of horror movies that try to tackle more than just the horror genre, but, you know, just like there are action movies that do more than just action, there are also action movies that are just action. And this is one of those horror movies that's just horror.
Yeah.
But, all right, what would you rate this one out of 10?
Probably around like a 6.5.
Yeah, I was thinking 7. Just, you know, it's better than an average movie. I like the practical effects, even though it does look a little clunky and awkward at times.
It was a little slow in the middle for me, but
yeah,
I mean, I'm used to really horrible horror, so
yeah.
I'm a very seasoned horror watcher, so it wasn't very spooky to me, but I can see the benefits of it. I can see why people would enjoy it, and I did like what I saw. Just it wasn't as scary, obviously, as other movies I've seen, because I started watching horror when I was like 10.
Yeah, and I think it is about an hour and 40 minutes, and I think, yeah, it probably could have been closer to that hour 30, cut out 5-10 minutes, and you'd move things along a little quicker. But yeah, solid movie.
It needs to tenderize the soul by attacking your sanity, isolating you from those who love you. And if anyone tries to help you, it will hurt them.
All right, my movie this week is Aporia, directed by Jared Moshe. And the opposite happened with this one than the last one. It has a 91% on Rotten Tomatoes, and I think that's very generous. I wish Rotten Tomatoes still like showed you the average rating, because I would bet it's sitting at everyone's middle of the road on this movie, with a few people loving and a few people hating. And I think it so happened that 91% of critics gave it a 6 out of 10. Because it's yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, it was nothing special, I wouldn't say. Which really sucks because I like Judy Greer a lot.
Yeah, and so, I don't know, I picked this movie just because I saw it was a really well-reviewed new sci-fi movie. I like sci-fi. I like movies that are reviewed well, so I thought we'd give it a go. Luckily, it was only $6 to rent as opposed to like going to a movie theater or anything, because I don't think it's worth really spending your money on. I think its biggest flaw is how profound it thinks it is. And I understand with sci-fi, you have to fully commit. You know, you can't, if you're going to say crazy concepts and go big on these sweeping themes and stuff, you've got to just commit. And they do, but unfortunately, it's just not as profound of stuff as they're committing to. And I think, not that the actors in this are untalented, but I don't think any of them do a good job of selling the ridiculous dialogue.
Yeah,
like, you have a movie like Arrival, which is one of my all-time favorites, and you get really great performances where they're talking about weird alien, trying to teach them languages and understand all of these weird concepts, and you watch it and it doesn't sound ridiculous in the world of the movie, but in the world of this movie, when they talk, they sound out of place.
Yeah, and the performances are fine, I guess. It's just, I don't know, there's nothing, it's not that nothing happens, it's just that nothing moves you in any way. Like, it's not really emotional, it's not really exciting, it's just a movie that was made.
Yeah, and I think it has I would love to see this concept done well, because it has interesting implications, and it's we've seen it a bunch. It's a butterfly effect type concept. But again, just because, you've seen something before doesn't mean you could do something new and interesting. I think there is plenty to still be said about these things. Bring your own philosophy to it. Bring, new storylines, new challenges for characters in these scenarios to overcome. And this one just doesn't. And then maybe we miss something, but the core science that they claim seems incredibly flawed in the logic of this movie. Like, if you stop for a second to think about it, which this movie gives you plenty of time to think about it and asks you to, there are some glaring plot holes that I am surprised were not caught.
Yeah, and then it's also like the characters themselves are really wishy-washy, so it's not just the science, it's like the characters' behaviors. Like, they're like, we can't do this because we don't know the effects of it, and then in the next scene they're like, let's do it. It's just, I don't know.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see the production of this. I wonder if it's either a script that's been getting kicked around for a long time, so and that's why the characters are a little inconsistent, there's some plot holes, there's stuff like that, or if it's like a short film, because this would be a very interesting short film. You could tell this in 15-20 minutes, and it would probably be a really interesting concept, and you wouldn't get into any of that gray area or plot holes and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I was thinking that because, like, the way that it's described in the, like, we'll go into it more in spoilers, but the way it's described, it would be easier as just a short film. Like, the main chunk of the plot is the first 10-15 minutes of the movie, maybe 20.
Yeah, and then they just start trying to expand on it for another hour and
it
half.
Doesn't need to be. Like, they could have just left it at,
yeah,
they did this thing and now things are different.
Yeah.
The end.
But instead they just end up trying to justify escalation of stakes and tying themselves in knots and creating issues for themselves. All right, spoilers for Aporia. The basic premise, two guys who are, one's a physicist who's come over from Middle East or North Africa somewhere as like a refugee after he's lost his family. And then another guy was an engineer and suffered a tragic accident where he kind of had to take a step back from his main work. And then the guy who steps back dies in a car accident, and his wife is left to raise their daughter alone, and their life is sad and hard now because he was the rock of their family, and really the daughter really connected with him, and it's really hard to lose someone really close to you. However, these two guys happen to be building something that shoots these abstract particles in quantum physics back in time.
And can kill someone.
And will release energy, and if we know exactly where someone is, it will release in their brain and kill them. And so, after almost no deliberation, they decide to kill the man who was drunk driving that killed the husband. And then, lo and behold, some other slight things start changing. Because he's been alive, she didn't take a different job, so she's still working in hospice as opposed to long-term care or whatever at the like at the same center she was at, but slightly different. And so she's trying to kind of figure this stuff out. And the husband and everyone else in the world has experienced these different 8 months, except for the two of them in the room. And then they kind of realize it's due to this thing that exists within quantum mechanics where the observer can experience a different reality than everything else. So just by virtue of observing, you've changed things and it works differently, which is a fundamental basis of quantum mechanics. I made it through part of Quantum 2 in college, so this was years ago. I have vague memories of this stuff. But yeah, and I was like, oh, that's kind of a cool way to get around time travel issues, because you're going to start being, oh, is it a split universe? Is it a this? Is it a that? And it allowed them to have the entire world change, but these characters don't experience it because they observed the machine being activated and they know the change is coming. And so then they start having these conversations. Well, should we start killing people in the past who do horrible things, like a school shooter or, just a serial killer? They start having these kind of mild ethical debates because they don't get into too much detail. And it just, it doesn't pick up. The wife then makes the very obvious dumb decision of trying to befriend the wife
of the man
they killed, because she's like, oh, I know how hard it is. And it's like, yeah, okay, cool.
And she's super struggling and lost her house and stuff. And
turns out the guy was really, in this version of the world, a really good guy. And again, like kind of the rock of that family. And so it's shaking them up, and she's kind of seeing it all played back. So now it's, oh, well, we did this, but hey, she's struggling because of this guy she got some money tied up with. If we go back and kill him for his money stuff, then she will never have invested with him and won't lose it all, blah, blah, blah. And spirals out of control. There's a brief moment where the friend who's helped them build the machine decides to kill a school shooting person, and there's just never talked about again, no consequences or reward for having done that really talked about. They're just like, oh, cool, and then move on as if it, and they just get upset that he didn't consult them, but like never comes back.
Yeah. And when they go back and kill the the investor person who made the lady go bankrupt, it turns their son or their daughter into a boy.
And our issue here is, my understanding of it,
I think we just didn't pay attention. I think he said that it goes back 8 years because he killed the school shooter, so they knew it would go back far enough to kill the other person. I think we just didn't really pay attention because it was boring.
Okay, I hope so, because the way, from my remembering of it, which may be flawed, they were going to go back 8, 10, whatever years to kill the money launderer guy, and then suddenly their daughter, who's a teenager, is a boy. And so maybe we missed something. But the bigger flaw is we have spent all of this time talking about how if you observe the machine being activated, that remains and you stay and whatever. And then they spend a whole lot of time talking about, well, the guy from the Middle East can't activate it because then he'll have never built the machine. But if he activates it, he's still lived that life in which he's built the machine.
Yeah, I was saying it's not going to make any sense if he goes back and kills the person who took his family, because what's he going to do? Walk out of the room of his house and someone else owns it because he never would have come to America.
Yeah.
It just, none of it, it's flawed as much of time travel is.
Yeah. And so I think they had a really good concept. And again, like, through the magic of time travel, all of these things work out that, like, when they bring the husband back, she was supposed to just be off at the shop picking up soda and forgot, quote unquote, according to the husband, because she shows up without it. And so that gets around it. But you start entering these conversations where, well, how do we explain this guy being in a house in a different country than where he would have been after these moments? Again, I think it probably would have been better. Wave your hand and just say he was on a business trip, he took a job over here somewhere, because you have like 10 years for them to fill the gap. They could have just been, oh yeah, you know, you were doing really well over there as a physicist, you got brought over to be a researcher, and you bought this house, and he walks out and his whole family lives there or something, but something's wrong or whatever because consequences, I don't know. But instead they claim that he may never build the machine because blah, 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 and that's why he can't do it because it won't work, which doesn't work with the logic of the film. And then at the end, they kind of backtrack that, and they are going to do it, and then they're not upset that the time machine's never going to be built or whatever. They're just sad that they're going to lose their friend because the husband and wife decide to leave the room so that they can experience life with their kid and not have to have lived, like, have a son who they just know nothing about. So yeah, interesting concept, poorly executed.
Yeah, exactly, which is a bummer because it could have been cool, but oh well. What would you rate it?
I will give this a 3 out of 10.
Yeah, I'd give it a 4.
Sometimes I get so mad I just want to strangle the man that did this to us.
There's a science to everything. We can save them.
All right, thank you for listening to this week's episode. Make sure you follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Nerd and Normie, and tune in every Monday for a new episode.
And if you're listening on YouTube, like and subscribe. And if you're on an audio platform, leave us a 5-star review. It really helps us out.
Thank you.